Hello, so today we're going to talk about misconceptions about disability, and this is actually a disability misconceptions tag that was created by another YouTuber, and I was tagged to do the tag. I can't remember the name of the person who tagged me, and I apologize. I will put her name right up here, but she is another YouTuber, and she is blind, and I believe she does content about like fashion and makeup. Think kind of similar to Molly Burke. So let's do the tag. What is your disability and how does it impact you? So for those of you who know very little about who I am deaf and I deal with chronic pain. There are people who consider mental illness a disability, so we'll throw that in as well. So I'm deaf, I deal with chronic pain, and I am mentally ill with depression and the like. The way that it impacts me is, well, being deaf, it affects me the most because communication happens a lot. You know, I'm going out somewhere and it affects me because people will be trying to get my attention and I can't hear them. Getting work, going to the doctor and like things like that. When I go to YouTube events and other conferences, that affects me because like if I'm going somewhere with a bunch of YouTubers, if I'm at an event, like a party at the event or like any kind of social networking thing there, and I don't have the proper accommodations with me on things that are like one-on-one type of deals, that affects me. And now that I think about it, why don't VidCon and them give me interpreters for those like smaller things instead of just the panels? That's a different video. With chronic pain, I deal with chronic pain a lot in my back, my shoulders, and my jaw because I have TMD. The TMD is kind of like something that just, it's really annoying, but it's not the worst, at least as far as like impacting me in my day-to-day life. My back is what really does that, so it can be difficult for me to get out of bed, for me to get up and do like the smallest things, like I don't want to go do the dishes or clean something because it just hurts to stand, and I would rather just either sit or lie down. With mental illness, it's kind of almost like with the chronic pain thing, except, you know, depression. I don't want to do anything. I'm not motivated to do anything. I don't want to do work. I don't want to find work. I don't want to deal with anybody or myself, you know, that kind of thing. What is the most common misconception that you experience in regards to your disability? So, deafness. I did a whole video on like myths about deafness, but it's just, I think probably one of the biggest things is just that we are incapable of doing things. Like mainstream society doesn't want to give us work because we'll be a liability or we just can't do that type of deal, type of thing, stuff like that. Really, that's kind of like, that's the umbrella misconception, and then you can add in a bunch of other things underneath that. With chronic pain, it's the fact that I can just like pop in a Tylenol and then be on my way. I've been the guinea pig of some people sometimes trying to get me to just take medication and not believing me. And mental illness, you know, I also did a video on this. I pretty much did a video on all the myths about all these three things. And with mental illness, it's like depression isn't real. I'm just sad for a second. I can snap out of it, you know. Think happy thoughts and everything will be okay. Which misconception annoys you the most? Deafness. The fact that I just like, I can't do anything. So like now I'm an adult, I'm trying to survive and I'm trying to thrive in life and, you know, move forward and, you know, just make my life bigger than what it is now. But people don't think that I can do that. Therefore, that kind of puts a stunt in my growth. It feels like it just keeps keeping me down rather than helping me move up, and I feel stuck because of that. And then basically all the misconceptions that annoy me the most, the ones that I explained in the previous question, those just annoy me a lot. Do you do anything to combat these misconceptions? Well, I make videos and I write articles, rikkipoynter.com, and I do speaking engagements to talk about these things. Really, my main platform is YouTube, so you know I make videos about that. So I've done the myth video about mental illness, chronic pain, and deafness. I started my own business. You know, this is kind of the business that I have doing that. What more do you think can be done to combat the misconception around your disability? Society as a whole as opposed to individual work is a good direction for the answer. So this is the thing, like a lot of people consider themselves allies, right? But I feel like, even the people closest to me in my life don't actually do anything to like talk about this kind of stuff. Like they don't promote it on their social media or whatever. And it's kind of like, I get people that will be like, wow, Rikki, it's so great that you're doing this kind of thing to, you know, educate others, but they don't do that. These are like my able-bodied friends, right? And instead of just keeping the education and the accessibility knowledge, whatever, like in the little disability and the deaf circle, it needs to branch out and reach into the able-bodied, abled circle. So when my abled friends are like coming over to me and praising me for all this work, and I very much appreciate it, obviously, it's not like, oh, well, fuck you, but it's just, it would be so helpful if they would take the praise that they're giving me and others and like helping push that to their friends, to their followers, and it needs to be spread out outside of this little niche, I guess. So, you know, educate people on the topic, call your representatives, you know, the whole HR 620 thing that's been going around that passed the House and is now going to higher ups, I think. It's the friends, it's the abled friends and the people. Call your politicians and help us make that change. I just feel like if you're gonna be an ally, if you're gonna consider yourself an ally, please help us with the work that it takes and that it's going to take to try to make things better. And those are the questions. We can tag some people. These are probably going to be repeat tags. Molly Burke, Jessica, Andrea, Abby, James. I think that's it. Like my main little circle of friends that I know still update regularly. Rogan, Jonah, Jazzy, definitely Without Barriers, definitely Wanderlust. Those are the people that I'm going to tag. I hope you would do this tag. I will have the questions down below. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learned a few things. Before I go, if you haven't become a patron on my Patreon, if you would like to help support my work, you can do so by being a pledge today. Certain perks for the amount that you pledge. Or if you would like to make a one-time donation, I do have my Ko-fi link down below and in the pinned comment. And I will see you later. Bye.